Hey y'all, this is Dr. Charm and I am in complete devastation, y'all. I just watched Lifetime's Where is Wendy Williams documentary, like the part 1 and 2 that were on Saturday and Sunday, and I am completely devastated, y'all. And I wasn't the only one. I mean, Where's Wendy Williams and Wendy Williams were literally trending on X all weekend. But as a doctor, watching this documentary, I saw some things in the documentary that I don't think a lot of people in the general public really understand. So I really wanted to come to you guys and do a video really breaking down medically what's going on with Wendy. I have been a Wendy Williams super fan since I was in medical school. Like, she helped me get through medical school. It was like my stress release, my laughter, my joy. And during that time, like, I started to read her autobiographies when she had a radio show. And I really looked into what she talked about struggling with cocaine addiction. And so as I was reading about her struggles with addiction and how she did cocaine and crack and really had a daily habit, I was watching her radio show and I noticed that she had a brand deal with Nouveau, which they did like, I think like some kind of like champagne or some type of drink, but she had a brand deal with Nouveau, and it even went into the 6-week sneak peek that she had with the Wendy show, because she was still, I think she even drank some Nouveau on air when she started the Wendy show. And it really struck me because I literally had finished reading her autobiography, and the way I was trained in addiction medicine is that if you have a substance abuse or substance use disorder, that you should really stay away from anything that could be substances. Like, that's more the traditional school of thought. Like, if you have a cocaine or a heroin addiction, you should also stay away from alcohol. So it always raised my antenna that Wendy continued to drink. And my antenna were right, because what happens is when somebody has an addictive so-called personality, and it's basically, you know, people using addictions as coping mechanisms for emotional issues or trauma or pain. So instead of really dealing with the pain, they may abuse alcohol or drugs to really just kind of mask that pain. And so her getting off of cocaine but still drinking, it transferred that addiction to another addiction. It really did. Her son in the documentary says, hey, my mom has been an alcoholic for years. So I say that to say, like, I did a YouTube video in 2021 when Wendy was missing from the show and they started doing, you know, all these rotating guest hosts. And I speculated that Wendy had alcohol-induced dementia. And unfortunately, y'all, I was right. Wendy's son, Kevin Jr., known as Little Kev, basically said in the Lifetime documentary that Wendy was diagnosed with alcohol-induced dementia in, I think, around 2021 when he had brought her down to Florida. Wendy has also been diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia and aphasia. That just came out last week, at the end of the week, like right before the documentary dropped over the weekend. And so first of all, what is dementia? So dementia is basically the loss of cognition, which is awareness, judgment, the ability to make decisions and reason to the point where it can affect your daily life, where you're not able to continue on with your daily life. So that is dementia, and it is a progressively worsening disorder. It is not reversible. What is aphasia? They said Wendy has aphasia. So aphasia is the inability to form speech and language and write and do all those things that have to do with language in the brain. And so part of aphasia may be that people say the wrong words or say the wrong things. Like, there's a part in the documentary where Wendy says, the apartment I'm getting a new show in the apartment. Like, it didn't make any sense. That is a symptom of the aphasia. So the brain has different parts or different lobes, and frontotemporal, this is the frontal lobe, is like located here, and the temporal, that's where we get temples, so it's right on the sides. And so the frontotemporal dementia really strikes people younger, in younger age. They're between the ages of like 45 and 64 years old. So frontotemporal dementia basically affects the ability to make judgment, reasoning. It affects emotions. It affects the amygdala, which is in the temporal lobe of the brain, and that controls aggression and anxiety. And so you paint a picture, it begins to paint a clinical picture of someone who exercises poor judgment, can't make, good decisions. They may mix words up with the aphasia. It causes personality changes. It causes changes in cognition or the ability to think straight. It causes executive dysfunction, which executive dysfunction affects the ability to be able to plan and organize. So, she's not able to put a plan into place. Like, okay, I want to go to the store. The things that are involved in going to the store. Okay, you got to get your pocketbook. You got to get your cash. You got to get your car keys. You got to start the car, drive down the street. So that's like all the things involved in taking the steps and planning to go to the store. A lot of people were also looking at and questioning Wendy's behavior and how rude and nasty and irritable she was towards, her so-called publicist and her manager. And that's part of the dementia, you guys. Dementia can make people really irritable, aggressive, complete personality changes, because people who worked with Wendy before said that she was really pleasant to work with and really nice. And now she's yelling at everybody, screaming. Her temper's really short. She doesn't have a lot of patience. Y'all, this is part of the dementia. The other thing that I want to talk about in the movie, in the documentary, was when she had Sean and the driver take her to go get the vape pens, and how she was so confused. And, she was just like, well, the vape place is on the right, and you go in there and you get it, and that's not the right one. And she's yelling at Sean, and she was like, you got to drive by the Wendy show first, and it's going to be on the right-hand side. And then they had just went there, and she didn't recognize that they had just gone into the store. I mean, it was completely just really sad to watch. Well, that whole entire vaping scene is a textbook example of a phenomenon called sundowning. And so people with dementia, many people with dementia, they get confused in certain times of the day. So if you notice during that scene, at the beginning of the scene, it's daylight. And as it goes on and they're going, and Sean's going back and forth into the store, and Wendy's, dissatisfied with what she's getting. And by the time they go and drive around again, and the producers say, we're going to stop filming, it's nighttime. So it went from late afternoon to dusk, early evening. And that is the time that sundowning happens. As it goes from day to night, people with dementia get confused, they get irritated, they can't really think straight, and that is called sundowning. And Wendy was clearly demonstrating sundowning. And so back to Wendy having alcohol-induced dementia. That just simply means that those years of alcohol abuse that Wendy has engaged in, confirmed by her son, have caused her to have irreversible brain damage. The good thing about alcohol-induced dementia is that if a person abstains from alcohol for 1 year, they start to see some improvements in just being able to have better attention and a little bit better memory and problem-solving abilities. It's not reversible. Dementia is irreversible, but abstaining from the alcohol helps slow down the progression of the dementia, and it just helps improve their quality. So if you notice at the end of the documentary, Wendy's family said since she had been in the facility, she sounded almost back to normal. And I think one of the reasons is because they were able to keep her away from alcohol. And the alcohol abuse is also impacting and worsening Wendy's lymphedema. Wendy has been very candid about lymphedema. Like, she had to start wearing tennis shoes. She used to wear high heels to the show, and she had to stop because she had lymphedema. And lymphedema basically involves an issue with circulation of lymph. Lymph is a fluid that circulates in our body. It sends nutrients to certain parts of our bodies, and it sends waste away from certain parts of the body, and it's constantly circulating all the time. And when you have lymphedema, that circulation is compromised, and so that fluid starts to accumulate in certain areas and causes swelling. And the legs is a very common place, and Wendy's legs and feet have really been affected. Alcohol abuse also causes fluid imbalances. So Wendy's continual consumption of alcohol is worsening her lymphedema. And she complained during the documentary that she only has 5% sensation in her feet because of the lymphedema. And then they had to move to a different apartment because she's on 2 levels and it's a fall risk for her to be on 2 levels. I mean, she has to have help walking. In many scenes, we see her in a wheelchair. We've seen her out in public in a wheelchair. So her drinking is not only making the dementia worse, but it's making the lymphadema worse, in my medical opinion. So I really wanted to just break down medically what's going on with Wendy. And then emotionally, she just seemed like extremely emotionally dysregulated. You know, she was crying a lot. She, expressed that she was happy that the film crew was there because she didn't feel so lonely. She hadn't seen her family in 8 months. She hadn't seen her son in a really long time. And I really think that Wendy also has major depression in addition to the alcohol issues, and the alcoholism is being exacerbated by the depression and vice versa. And her not being around her family members and loved ones certainly cannot be helpful with her having this alcoholism and depression. In the end, I really hope all the legal stuff really gets wrangled out and Wendy's family gets some rights over Wendy. And I really think they have her best interest in heart. It was really infuriating to me that a professional guardian who gets a salary to oversee Wendy's affairs, who just really, I don't feel has her best interest in heart. Because if she had her best interest in heart, Wendy wouldn't be running around here ordering liquor at restaurants and hiding liquor bottles in the house and having access to liquor. I just don't think that would occur. And I really felt like her sister Wanda would probably be best to be her guardian. So at the end of the documentary, it talked about the guardianship being under review, sometime here in 2024, I don't know when. But I really, really hope that Wendy's family, gets some rights and input in her care. As a person who has worked with patients suffering from dementia and also a family member who ended up dying from complications of Alzheimer's dementia, I just really feel that her isolation from her family is not in her best interest. It cannot be good for her mental health. Her son and her family members don't even know where she physically is. That has to be devastating to them. I really think when people are having these major medical issues in their family, whether it be cancer, dementia, Alzheimer's, heart disease, diabetes, when you're dealing with major medical crises like this, a healthy family dynamic is really important in your healing and in your care. So I really, really hope that Wendy's family gets rights. Again, you guys, I just really want to come to you guys with a medical perspective to just help with some understanding. I am so sorry to see this happen to Wendy. I love Wendy Williams. She is the GOAT. She is in the Radio Hall of Fame, Hollywood Walk of Fame. She has Emmys. I mean, this woman's nominations. She is the harbinger of the gossip culture that we have now, good or bad. I mean, the YouTubers and the bloggers and everybody, they have to bow down to Wendy because she was the one that started this stuff. So you guys, I just really, really hope that Wendy could get to a place where she is at least comfortable and receiving the right kind of care. This documentary really put a spotlight on how corrupt the guardian system is in America. And I really hope that some kind of legislation or something comes out of this documentary, because it's so frustrating that just anybody could send somebody to court and end up just taking over their finances and their life and everything and have control over that and keep them from their families. And though I'm not a lawyer, this documentary and what has happened to Wendy is a cautionary tale on getting good estate planning, having your medical power of attorney in place, your financial power of attorney in place, having a living will, having a trust, having those things in place. There's no reason that Wendy Williams has worked hard in this radio and TV game for over 20-something years and her son should be evicted from his apartment that she pays for. Like, I'm sure if she had been in her right mind, she would not want her son to be evicted from his place of living while he's going to college. This has been Dr. Charm, and in the words of the legend and the icon, Wendy Williams, hold on.